So, guys, when I started this thing called this Locations Africa podcast, my dream really was to talk about this beautiful continent called Africa in such a glorious and revenue-driven way that highlights exactly what we're trying to achieve as a global industry, which is churning out content, right? Churn it out because we have so many platforms globally where people can consume this content. But in that churning out is for Africa to remain competitive and remaining competitive in many different ways. Yes, with story. Yes, with the content itself, whether it's social media content, little bites, maybe 30 seconds, 3 minutes, whether you are a film of, plus 72 minutes, whether you're a TV series of 8 seasons thick, how does Africa compete? And I keep asking myself this. And the one question I keep asking myself, and you keep hearing me, and you've heard me say this before, is what does success look like in an African context of making film? What does the success look like in promoting our locations? What does success look like with our equipment? What does success look like with our performances? What does success look like with our technology? What does success look like in competing on the global scale? And sometimes we put ourselves into this little silo of being Africa. Is it a good thing or is it a inhibitor? Is it a limiting factor? It's both, probably, that double-edged sword situation. But anyway, so it took me back to the reason why, we started Locations Africa. I remember back in the day, and it must have been after 2007, I was working with the Film Foundation at the time here in South Africa. And our big job really was, to promote the South African film industry, to develop training, to position for co-production and all those wonderful KPIs. And we went halfway across the world. As you know, I keep saying this, halfway across the world, we found that we were kind of one of very few African countries that were promoting. And then we would get there and anyway, we would do what we could for our continent, and I think we did a lot. And then in all of that, I met this amazing person. Oh my God, his name is Martin Cuff. And he at the time was he was at Cape Town. He was the Cape Film Commissioner at the time. But he was working in government. He was working with the NFF. He was in state, and I was in state. And we sparked up this really great professional relationship that showed me a very big view as to how we must position our continent. And so anyway, this person called Martin Cuff came into my life when I was back at NFF. And when I left NFF and I said, what's the one thing I want to do for this industry? I want to continue to promote this, definitely the South African industry for sure. But I guess because of my upbringing and where I come from my life living as an exiled child from my country because of apartheid, I grew a very global African community and family. And my understanding was, and I saw Africa as a country because of my socialization and the way that my community brought me up. My community being, you know, people from the African diaspora, not just from our continent, but also from those who were, kind of decentralized from our continent, from the continent, to the Caribbean, from South America, the UK, Europe. But anyway, bringing it right back to where we are, I then said, I need to do something for our continent. I need to work to promote who we are through our locations, our crew, our equipment, what we can do, our tourism through film. And then I just thought to myself, who can help me with this? Oh my God. And the name Martin Cuff came up. Um, so I phoned Martin. I said, Martin, I want to do this thing, man. I want to do this thing. I said, what thing, Azani? What thing? And I said, I want to do this thing called Locations Africa. And he said, oh my God, no. Right? And he said, I'm in. And then from then, that was about 2013 or so, 2013, 2014, he just said, let's go, let's do it. So he started building this thing called like, he's my, literally the chief strategist on this thing and has stood by us from then right the way through to all the ups and downs and also to the success of the conference that we've had. And we're 6 years in, and I'm so grateful to that. But anyway, let me introduce this person properly. I'm going to give him his flowers, his credentials. He's online. He's not here on the continent at the moment. He is in Serbia. That's where he lives and works at the moment. He kind of comes, he travels around the world as a global citizen. But let me read his credentials. I'm going to read it off, and it's Martin Cuff. His credentials include roles as the executive director of the Association of Film Commissions International, who was based in Los Angeles. And if anyone knows anything about the Association of Film Commissions International, it's the global organization for all film commissions and film offices worldwide. And he was the executive director of that back in the day. He was also the executive director of the Colorado Film Commission in Denver. He was also the executive director of the Cape Film Commission and the Cape Film Permit Office here in South Africa, and chief operating officer of the then Sitenge Film Festival, the Southern African International Film and Television Market. He has gone on and he will do his own credentials. He has gone on really to help countries strategize with different countries. He's worked with the Film Commission and the Commission in Namibia, helping set that up. He has worked with the Film Commission in Kenya, helping to set that up. He's worked with the Film Commission with KwaZulu-Natal, the then KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, which is now Tafa. He's setting that up. He works with the Gauteng Film Commission with that. He's worked with the National Film Video Foundation. He's worked with Ghana. He's worked with Egypt. He's worked with Marrakesh. He's worked with so many African film commissions on top of that, that I really think this competition is going to be amazing. So Martin, I'm going to say hello to you. And I know you don't like me doing your flowers, but you so deserve your flowers, Martin. You've done so much in this extensive life of yours. And I just want us to, let's just start at the beginning. Let's say hello. Hi, how are you? It's cold out.
I'm I'm good. The sun is shining here. One of the benefits of being in Europe in May, June is that summer is here. So finally I stopped crying myself around my apartment. Yeah, winter does not work for me. But yeah, it's summer is finally coming, so I can relax again.
Thank you.
So I was just in Cape Town last week, and that was magnificent. So I was very pleased to be home.
No, I'm so pleased. I like it. You call it home. I love you. I love you.
Yeah, it's still home. I can't
I
get
love
away.
you. So, Martin, let's have a conversation. Let's start with the question. What does success look like for Africa for producing content on the continent? And what I mean by that is, yes, we produce our own local content, which is what we're very proud of, right? Each country does that. I'm also talking about inter-country participation. I'm also talking about co-productions with the rest of the world. But in that, it's not just the story I want to talk about. I don't want to talk just about the story because we kind of find ourselves landing there. I'm talking about the business value chains. What are the opportunities? What does it look like? And what does success look like? And let's see if we can kind of finish off the conversation and come back to the question and say, okay, fine. How do you activate that success? That's the last question I'm going to ask you. Let's start with the first one.
So, I mean, this is a broad set of questions, but let's try and tackle this answer kind of systematically. So one of the things that I learned quite early, obviously landing in South Africa with Sitenge to start off with, which was really the first attempt by the Mandela era government to reintegrate South Africa with the global film industry. And so, and then moving on to Cape Town, which, as you know, has quite um, a divided approach. And by that, I mean, on the one hand, you're dealing with young, hungry Black filmmakers who want to tell their own stories, who don't necessarily then understand that the big companies that are servicing international films and television commercials um, are actually not spending their own money to make films. They're spending other people's budgets. And so I often used to be sitting in meetings where people would go, but why does moonlighting have all the business? And it would be, well, Moonlighting goes and gets the business and bases their income based on their delivery of services for that. And then they build themselves a reputation. And it was quite interesting. I mean, we're talking a while ago now, but the average income as a result of making a 30-second TV commercial for foreigners was the same as a 22-minute budget from the SABC to produce. So the budget to produce a 22-minute segment
Yeah.
for for an SABC TV show was the same as the profit being made producing a 30-second TV commercial for France. And so the industry was kind of going in two different directions from the very beginning. And there were the people wanting to make their own projects in a environment of scarcity,
Yeah.
and the people wanting to service other people's work in an environment of abundance, because at that point South Africa was, up and coming, and people wanted to film here, and the rand was cheap, and the seasons were different, so you could come in the summer and in our December and make your commercials, which would be released 3 months later in time for the British Spring, and so. But from the beginning, there was this failure to understand that there are two different film industries working in parallel.
Yeah.
And the success of one
Yeah.
really unlocked a whole bunch of successes for the other, but that was not really well understood. So the fact that international films and television commercials required the latest cameras
Yeah.
meant that the cameras that had been used would be passed down and then would become available to the local industry. And so the local industry may not be working on the latest bells and whistles cameras, but they still were getting access to cameras, lighting equipment, sound equipment, skills
Yeah.
that would otherwise not be available to them. And I think that this is something that is largely misunderstood across Africa,
Yeah.
is that by creating environments for international films to film on location, you create the opportunity to expand the skills base, the equipment base, the services base that can benefit the entire industry, especially the local industry. From then on, you look at it from a perspective of from a government perspective, is that what you're then trying to do is making sure that if a film production chooses you as a destination, that you make sure that all of the local goods and services are available. There's no point selling your destination as a film destination if they're only going to bring everything with them. You don't get any economic benefit from
You get
that.
nothing, you get nothing from back from
Yeah.
that.
So the goal is always to make sure that not only are you promoting the destination, but at the same time, you are building the goods and services and processes at a local level to make sure that as many local businesses and individuals as crew or actors or whatever can take part in the film.
So you're,
Um,
yeah, go on.
yeah, carry on. You had a question?
I'm saying, so essentially at this point, what we're actually saying is success really is about being ready, being market ready. That's what success looks like, is being market ready, but understanding
Well,
what
well,
market ready.
well. So, but
Yeah,
then there are, let's look at the other side of the coin, because simply having great equipment and great opportunities for a local film industry
yeah,
does not create a film industry. Because if it did, everyone who had equipment and talent
yeah,
would have a film industry, and we clearly don't. So there are two things that I think end up being the missing pieces of building a local film industry and creating success of that within this kind of environment.
yeah.
And one is understanding of audience.
Okay.
And when I'm saying audience, I'm not talking about it from that kind of, you know, rarefied critics. I'm talking about people who are prepared to pay to see your stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Um, And that is not, again, widely understood generally. We're not understanding the breakdowns of who is going to line up to pay to watch your film. And then the other thing I think, which is quite an interesting challenge that every filmmaker faces, is the gatekeepers.
Right.
which is the people who sit in funding bodies and at broadcasters who have their own goals and targets, right? They've got their own things that they're trying to do. And
Listen,
so
this is
you
true,
can go
guys.
to them with the greatest film on earth, the greatest TV series proposal. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't fit what they've already identified as their target audience, and again, they've identified that as a target audience because that's how they get advertisers to pay for things. So it's this the thing that's not that defines success locally, I think, and when I say across Africa, is this connection between audience and money that um, and I think that one of the things I would like to talk about this morning is the opportunity that is being missed on the African continent to exploit to identify and exploit that audience in a radical way, which completely transforms the industry for everybody and moves the local experience of one of being working in an environment of scarcity to being in one of abundance.
Ha! I want to go straight into that radicalness. But before that, let me do this, right? So we're saying a couple of things. We're saying we have to be market ready. We're saying we have to understand the distribution of it, right? And also we have to understand the relevance of the story you're telling. Okay. So even in a situation where you've got a servicing delivery, right? You're out here doing servicing as the big guys do. Do those three things still matter? And do they have an influence on the African film economy? Does the distribution of that particular film, it's not an African film, right? It's a big blockbuster that's happened to use as a backdrop, whether it's cheat or original, all right? Let's walk away from the cheat. As a proper backdrop with the proper names of the streets, okay? Let's say, for instance, in Johannesburg, it's easy to, oh, as a note, guys, it's easier to just use it as a backdrop because there's so many things you cannot do in post. You're gonna forget the yellow lamppost. I am telling you for free. South Africa has yellow traffic light lampposts. Please, just so you know this. Okay. So essentially you're saying that my question to you is the international guys, do they know that distribution is important because it speaks to their audiences in terms of the success of shooting on location in Africa? Do they know that the storyline makes is a critical factor? And is the audience argument the same for service teams as well? I get it for the local industry, and we will unpack that with a radicalness that we're going to talk about just now. But those three things, are they still relevant in the international servicing market?
Absolutely. Because when it boils down to it, every other industry, certainly in the West, I mean, let's put it at the West from a Western perspective. Every other industry in Europe and the US and Canada are making decisions based on its financial viability.
Yeah.
And so everything ties into making something financially viable. Is that where you're planning to film? Is it cost effective? Does
Yeah.
it have everything you need? How much will need to be flown in? Do they have work ethics so that they can deliver 12-hour shoot days one day after another? Market readiness is 100% a service issue. We talked about distribution. Well,
Yeah.
whether it's a TV commercial or a feature film, the people who are funding those things have thought very, very clearly about where they're going to get their money back.
Yeah,
So
but
it might be Lipton's tea for a TV commercial, but they've thought really clearly about who's going to be their audience for Lipton tea and what that commercial is going to deliver. So, and it's all about shifting product for them. They know that if they're going to pay, $1 million to be in the ad break of the Super Bowl, that's going to create economic returns for them,
yeah,
right? And one of the things that I would say, when I moved to Colorado from Cape Town, and I was completely shocked. And I don't know why I was, but in retrospect, it's quite funny. But I don't know if we have any concept of what it's like to be a young filmmaker in an environment where there is no state support for film whatsoever. There are
but
no There are no National Film and Video Foundation waiting to give you money to make your film. There's nobody. The only way you make a film in America is if you have proved what your audience is and you have got investment from someone who understands that they also want to reach that audience.
Oh my God. Oh my word. That is a light bulb moment. You know why? Because we think that the rest of the world has funding for days and they have so many government incentives. The only real incentive that comes is an incentive for to pr produce a film in a particular location across the world. So actually,
The Europeans do have film funds,
they
which
do.
help them
And can
develop, they have exactly the same film fund models that we have from the NFVF, the development funding, the production funding, the post funding, the take it to festivals funding. So the Europeans have that, which is why European film is able to sort of um, compete vaguely in the global market. But yeah, the Americans have nothing, zero, zero.
so they are in exactly the same position as as most of the other countries on our continent. So they just kind of hustle their way through, but they're still able to hit those three sweet spots. Let
But
me
you know why they've also been able to do it
why.
is because the Americans understand marketing and they understand their audience and they understand how to push films in a way that people will try and watch them. And without that, I mean, it's one of the biggest shocks to me about the way that Trump is handling the America is that Hollywood is America's soft power.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that Hollywood and the US films present a lifestyle of like an image of what America is, that's all intentional.
I know,
And we kind of think that it just happens, but this is all intentional positioning of a nation
but this is
and
my
the
thing.
stories that it's.
This is my question to you is in terms of the yes, there's a financial decision to shoot on location in our continent because let's face it, leave the East Coast, you've already cut your budget by at least 30%, right? Just on exchange rates and lifestyle and bread, the cost of bread and the cost of the burger, right? You've already cut your by that. Now, but the backdrop and what they see in the actual situation, right? Is it does that feed into the audience ratings and what the audience wants to see and the box office and the streamer clicks and likes and all of that stuff is that also a clear decision like yes, I get it, it's a cost factor. Okay, it's cheaper to shoot here than there. Is it always a cost factor, should I say? Cheaper to shoot here than there, and then they kind of work around the backdrop and say, okay, fine, we were shooting in Egypt. Or do they intentionally say, I want to shoot in Egypt because of these reasons? So what then happens? I need to get
So,
to the
so there are a
benefits of that.
couple of lines of decision making. On the one hand, you have adventurous directors
Yeah.
who have strong studio backing. They have the confidence to make these kind of decisions. Who say, "We have seen New York be blown up on so many occasions, and we know, in our superhero movie, we want to do it somewhere differently." We want new, fresh faces, people, stuff on our screens. So that's one thing. So you do get that. Um, the other thing that I would suggest that everyone starts paying attention to is the number of Chinese characters that start appearing in Hollywood movies. And this is all purely financial. In the old days, there was a thing that they used to call the long tail, which was they would make a movie, it would go to the cinemas. After a certain period of time in the cinemas, it would be sold to TV. After a certain period of time in TV, it would go to video, and you would be able to, rent it from your Blockbuster or buy a copy of the video. And eventually, you would see reruns on TV for years to come.
Yeah, yeah.
All of those would be earning opportunities.
Right.
That, because of streaming, because of, the changes in the way that we consume product,
Yeah.
when the release window is the same day and they're releasing it on the streamer, on the cinema, and direct on video or, direct for download, that entire window for them to make money collapses. And
Right?
so the reason that you're going to start seeing so many more Asian characters in American films is that the Asian market now makes up about 18 to 20% of the revenue of any Hollywood film. And so, in order to make films that appeal to those audiences, you have to start having characters and locations that those things happen in, right? Makes
Yeah.
sense. And so, and both sides of the equation, right? Both local films and international films. I'm just going to pull this up on my screen here so I can read you some of these figures. I did this maybe maybe a couple of years ago, so these things change. But seven of the top 15 best performing economies in the world are African. Libya with a 12.5% growth rate, Mozambique at 7%, DRC at 6.7. Add to that, 11 of the top 15 countries for demographic growth are in Africa. Um, Niger, Angola, Chad, Uganda, Burundi, all growing, Mali, all growing at more than 3% in terms of the size of
Yeah.
their economies. Um, 14 of the 15 countries with the largest proportion of citizens aged under 18 are in Africa. 14 of 15. Niger, 56%, Uganda, 55, Angola, 54, Gambia, 52, Zambia, 52, right? I heard a figure the other day that Nigeria has 200 million people in its population. 100 million of them are under the age of 18. Now, where this matters in terms of content is that as Africa becomes more educated, more that there's more money in circulation in these growing economies, these young people, as they come of age, are all going to want products and services that reflect their needs, right?
Interesting.
So ultimately, what I think that we have within Africa, and I've thought this for a decade now. I mean, this for me, this is the the sorriest waste of our opportunity as a continent, is that on the one hand, as our people start wanting to watch the best quality content from around the world, I think that the Americans and the British and the others making, top quality international film, if they want to sell in Africa, will start having to incorporate African locations and African talent in their films. The same way as we see Chinese people popping up and we will need, they will need to start reflecting us.
This is true. And what
And
it
at
what
the same time,
yeah.
local filmmakers,
Yeah, yeah.
why would you restrict your distribution to 47 million South Africans when by making, let me just bring this up again. There's something quite interesting down here as well. Oh no, I managed to close my document. Let me just open it. Um, why would you, I'm just looking here. Nigeria, 223.8 million people. Ethiopia, 126.5. Egypt, 112 million.
Yeah.
Tanzania, 67 million. Kenya, 55 million. Uganda, 48 million. These are countries which have English as an official language. So, if you are going to make African film using an English language, you suddenly have access to these markets that are, again, the same reason that the Americans will start using this. They want, there's a growing, youthful, middle class, educated, wealthier society. Why would they not want African content to watch?
So know what this comes to, because I really want to get to radicalization, is it opens up the opportunity for content producers to really position themselves globally as the base when people come to our continent for us to then be able to exercise the economic benefit, right? So I'm saying, and I keep asking people, yes, guys, story is really, really important, and your story is probably really dear to you, but please, can you expand your business to allow for you to literally service someone else's creativity, but also be an advocate for the using Africa as a base and as a location. Because what it then starts to do, because I've realized, and this is an amazing thing that happened. I think the work you and I did, and I'm gonna put my flowers where they are deserved, is we went halfway across the world, Martin, and we kept saying, "Come to South Africa, come to South Africa, come to Africa, come to Africa, come to Namibia, come to Kenya, come to da 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 da, come to Egypt, come to Egypt." We kept saying this and repeating it, right? People eventually came. Now, because of tourism and so many other induced economies, I'm now starting to see in films, it's in script now. I remember I was standing in LA somewhere, and I was at the AFM, and I said, guys, yes, you can use France, Cape Town as a backdrop for France. You can do that. And people looked at me and was like, yes, French commissioner guy, yes, we can, right? But I then said, guys, I think what you need to do in order to expand your audience reach is to just say Johannesburg in your script. Just say it. Just say Vento, guys. Just say Accra. Just say Dar es Salaam. Just say it because what you're doing is you're pulling in audiences. It's okay. My word, do you know how many times I hear different African cities? A lot of them, yes, South African ones definitely because a lot of people spend time here in script. I get so excited. I mean, I get like, oh my God, they mentioned our country. Oh my God. And it put pride in me such that I literally forward the link of that film to other people. Like, guys, watch this. I will get to episode number 5, because they mentioned, and I get excited by that. And it's simple. And for me, it's simple, but it has an induced economy kind of follow through. And what it then also says is, guys, people know of the word Dar es Salaam. They know it. They know Zanzibar as a word. We need to, in the films that we're doing, is say Zanzibar, right? There's a lot of films, guys, right now on the streamers, and they are shot in KZN, right? I am telling you for free, maybe about 30 of them actually will say Moses Mabhida Stadium. No, no, no. 20, but no, no, 10% will say Moses Mabhida Stadium. Guys, I have watched over December, it was one series after another, one film after another. They were all shot in the same city. But I kid you not, I think only one of them said Moses Mabhida Stadium. And what that I started,
Can I also add to that?
was a
Because this
worry for
is
me. And I thought, how are we not saying these things? How are we not
well,
saying,
let's put this into another perspective too. Is that one of the things that I mean, Walt Disney did it first back in the 50s, where he understood that his storytelling could happen in cartoons, in comics, in the parks that he was creating, the tourism destinations, in television, on feature films, and he understood that Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter where he's going to be or what story he's telling. If you've got content that people want to watch, they will find it and consume it happily wherever they go.
yeah,
Several years ago, I saw one of the first things that came to my awareness of this, and they call it transmedia. And it's the
that's
idea
the
that you
right
can
term.
tell
My goodness, yeah.
that you can tell stories in different ways. And one of the first people I saw do this properly was District 9, the South Neil Blomquist Blom
Yeah, yeah, him.
Neil
Neil, him.
um,
Neil.
Neil, um, because the website for the movie was not a website for the movie. It was a website for the corporation that was resettling the prawns. And on the website, the job applications that you could do as a human were for doctors and nurses and scientists. And the job applications available for prawns were cleaner and gardener. And so it was a really interesting reflection of both South Africa's apartheid past, right, which was what it was supposed to be echoing,
Yeah,
without finger wagging, just telling the story. And it was an embedding and a deep dive into the world of the film without detracting from the film at all,
yeah,
right? just another new way of giving you information. Jurassic World did this really well a few years ago. They had a website for that film, which was a website of the safari park, not of the movie. And
Yep.
on the safari park, you could do a deep dive into the behavior of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. There was, a list of the feeding times of the dinosaurs at the zoo. But there was also, and this is where I want to continue to draw attention to it. It was where to stay with Hilton hotels and how to get there with American Airlines. So clearly, what those filmmakers had done was create economic partnerships
Wow.
with other
Mm.
things that do not appear in the film itself, but actually add value to the filmmaker's process, right? And to the revenue streams. And so with all of the African stuff, I would really advise, and I'm going to try and do this with my own work at the moment, is you carve off a separate business line that looks at the travel and tourism and gastronomy and the lifestyle stuff that
Experience
goes
stuff.
along with
Yeah.
the things. Because the idea being, when we're putting these great African locations on film, people do travel.
Yeah, they do.
People travel and they want to go and see where that film was shot. Now, if you've gone to the trouble of putting together a movie or a TV series that has got these locations in it, why would you leave it up to the internet to make money out of the project that you've just done? Because you've captured beautiful locations images. Why would you not partner with a tour operator and get some money in that way? Why would you not partner with food providers to, take them to restaurants and have a commission based on the restaurants that they go to? Why would you hand in other words, why do you leave the film as your only revenue source when your project actually has a whole other set of things that you can use? And we were chatting briefly yesterday, but you have an adventure I have one that I'm working on of a girl who she falls out of an aeroplane in Peru and has to walk to safety. And from that, you've got everything from camping equipment to tour trips, both accompanied and self-guided. You've got, wildlife books. You've got literally a whole world of stuff, which is not, it is inspired by the film, but it is separate to it. And it gives you, as a filmmaker, if you can make those kind of contacts, new revenue streams. So it all adds to the value you're able to bring in. And again, if we're doing this across Africa, I can't help but see that that is, you know, it's ways for us to keep the money at home, right? It's ways to keep this in circulation for us.
Yeah, it does that. And the thing is that state, I hope that, other state agencies are listening to this conversation because it really is about, okay, fine. Yes, you have tourism. Yes, you have trade and industry. Yes, you have social development. Yes, you have, all of these ministries around the world. They always scream budget, 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 budget. We're just like, listen, we just want access. If you can give me access to this road or this field or this thing or whatever, I will help you create revenue. I will help you create an industry. All I'm saying is I'm going to carve out my own little money for this thing, but I'm going to use the locals, and the locals will start, it will be a feedback and a feed-in system. And then also the people that come in and then the visuals, people start tourism. And over a period of like 10 years, you start to see the returns. This is a long game, all right? This is what we're
Well,
talking.
and I think that's the biggest challenge when talking to government, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I always use this as an example. In 1978, I saw a movie called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which features a very uniquely shaped mountain called Devil's Monument, which is, I think, in Wyoming.
Yeah, it is.
Um, and I have one day I will go there. This place has captured my imagination for 20 years since I was 8.
Since you were two in
Um,
1978.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Anyway, um, I will get there one day. But how do you, as a government, measure that? And how do you justify your investment where everything is now turning to like, what was the return on investment? Well, if the investment doesn't come for the next 50 years, but it's going to come. So
Okay.
there are those kind of challenges that when dealing with government that they have, you know, on the one hand, they're very slow to change course. They're very slow to adapt and respond to opportunities that are presented to them. But on the other hand, they also are, like everybody else, having to respond to immediacy in terms of showing results.
100%.
And so therefore, saying to them, if you build this in 10 years' time, when an entirely different political party is going to be in power and other people are going to be reaping the benefits and other people are going to be standing up on the platform saying, look how great we are.
Why
It's
would
very difficult for the politicians to be able to, I mean,
political?
I wish it wasn't, but it is difficult for them
That's the reality. So we could talk about this topic. Film-induced tourism and film-induced economics for me is such a beautiful conversation to have. We can delve into it, but I want to go into this radicalization. Let's talk about this radicalization you're talking about in terms of the content for Africa. How do we speed things up, or is it about speeding up, or is it about slowing down and paying attention?
um,
Because you wanted to come back to this radicalization of content and radical.
well, so again, for me, it's that idea of, I mean, for instance, we're looking at Mr. Trump, who says he's going to put 100% tariff on any film shot outside the country. Um, personally, personally, I think that he has lost the plot there because only 40% of the revenue of American films comes from America. 60% comes from its international markets. And why would we continue to play that game, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we've
why?
got other things. However, the Mr. Trump has done some very interesting things for the global economy in terms of making us realize that over-reliance on America is perhaps not as wise and is more unsustainable than we thought it was.
Yeah,
My entire career has been about promoting filmmaking to travel to different destinations to take advantage of it. So I still fully believe in that. But I think from an African perspective, our opportunities sit in greater collaboration with each other.
right, right,
And even on, the stuff that we were trying to do with Locations Africa, of just trying to get the film commissions of the continent to work together um, more succinctly at an international level in order to get profile
um,
Africa.
yeah,
And it's bemused me that 10 years later they are still trying to do things individually. And I mean, just the other day I saw from Cannes the
okay,
Asian Locations Network,
yeah,
which is Asian Film Commissions Network, signing an MOU with the Location Managers Guild. Why is Africa not at that table? Why is Africa not? Because those guilds don't really want to speak to individual film commissions. They want to speak to a collective to understand that the industry is working towards similar standards, though that they are, if you come, whether you're in Ghana or in Tanzania, you're going to get similar service levels from your government officials. That's what they want for peace of mind, for
yeah,
security, to be able to spend their money. So on that's the one side. So I can't understand why the resistance to working together to build Africa's profile continues. It makes no sense to me. The other side of the coin, though, is the potential for films to think more locally. And by locally, I mean from an African perspective. One of the things I did quite a bit of work in Tanzania over the years, and the sheer size of the Swahili language market is mind blowing. I mean, I think there are like 140 million people who speak Swahili.
yeah,
And imagine, imagine, imagine simply making films for the Swahili market. If you're from a country like Namibia, where at that point, you have 2.5 million people in your audience, but suddenly you're going to make some films in Swahili because that gets you money.
Can I can I
I,
can I just jump in there for a minute? So I think this context what we're talking about with this film commissions thing. So the African Film Commissions Network that we started up, right? I think the stumbling block there, because we try to have meetings, Martin, we've tried to have meetings and meetings and trying to get this office up and trying to get funding. Literally, you're looking for like 2.5 million rand. Okay. It's not a lot of money, okay, to try and set up this office. And then you stumble across things like legislation and legal terminologies, and you can't in one country you can't say the word film commission because it's not in the legislation, and and it's all of these wonderful things. And I think that the intent is there from the recent meetings that we have. I think we had a couple of meetings last year. The intent was there, and there was a whole plan to have, create funding for African filmmakers to travel from country to country and only like ring fence money to only go to African markets, to only go to African film festivals, to then go and find co-producing partners and go and find the audiences and go and find these people. But that hasn't happened. And I really have to ask the question as to why not? Like, the proposals have been put out. How better can we start to really start gelling this together? Um, we had a discussion about dubbing in one of the previous podcasts about using the language